Welcome to LOA Today. Walt and life coach Tom Wells here. Today is Friday, May the 18th, 2018, 8 a.m. Eastern Time, your first daily dose of happy for the day. And we've been getting through a really happy week, lots of good things to talk about all week long, and we have no less of it today. We're actually talking about probably the most important point in the entire realm of understanding how the law of attraction works. So you've tuned in for the right podcast, I can promise you that. Tom, how you doing today? Have you had a good week?
Yes, I have. It's been a really great week. I got out for the first time to spend time on this lovely pond that I like to sit and work on. I call it my backyard or my front yard. And
Ooh.
I sit on the edge of this pond next to all these beautiful, what do you call them? Cattails or bulrushes.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
And then I look to the west and I see the snow-capped Rocky Mountains that aren't very far away, maybe 10 miles to the foothills. Actually, it's only 3 miles to the foothills. And then you can see the snow-capped range in the background and looking across this beautiful pond, and it's just full of birds and geese and everything out there just having a blast. And and then I do my work. And so I get aligned out there really well. I get connected to, that feeling of just allowing everything to just flow. And it's a wonderful place to be.
Oh, what a beautiful picturesque place to have the Rockies in the background. Oh,
yeah, it really is gorgeous. And it's just tree lined with these huge cottonwoods and willows. And it's just so beautiful.
Wonderful. What do you do for lunch? I mean, geez, after that, your day is blown,
What do I do for lunch?
Yeah, what do you do for an encore is my way of thinking of it,
Oh, for an encore, yeah. I go home and apply it all and with my computer.
Yeah, there you go, right.
Actually, I took my computer these times. I usually don't. I usually just take a notebook and I write things that, occur to me. I mean, I wrote some creative pieces out there this week. That was amazing just to watch this creative stuff show up. And so, yeah, it's a wonderful way to have a backyard or a front yard. It's 15 minutes from my house. So
very good. Yeah. Well, I can't say I've had that kind of outdoor fun. I've actually been mostly indoor this week, partly because of helping my wife with her gardening business, which is, May is like our busiest month of the year. So, it does take a little work.
For sure.
And the other half is we've got the book coming out, and I need to, get the little finishing touches done and, get all the stuff done for the two different versions, because there's the print version and then there's the Kindle version. And, they're very, very close, but still they're different. And so lots of little things to be done to get that ready, because we got a launch coming in a week. So good things happening. Good things happening.
That's great. Yeah. It's going to be exciting.
Actually, I think the biggest challenge with any of this is allowing it to happen, which is what the topic is for today. Because so often it's so easy to fall into that trap. Well, actually, a lot of different traps where you start stressing about stuff, you start worrying about stuff, you start wondering, geez, if I got everything done right and all that kind of stuff. And that's what kills you right there. It isn't actually the stuff itself, it's the way you think about it, right? And
that's
so
all it is. Yeah.
This whole thing about allowing is critical. It's crucial. And it shows up in so many different ways that we don't even expect. I mean, in the last few days, we've been talking a lot about resistance on the various podcasts. And resistance is one of those things. I mean, I was in a conversation on Facebook just this morning with somebody who exhibited a form of resistance. He didn't even realize it. And I pointed out to him that what he was experiencing was resistance. And I pointed out how we don't recognize it as resistance. And his reaction, long story short, was, oh, yeah, that's right.
Good.
But it's true.
Say he resisted you.
well, yeah, that's also possible, right? But
yeah, it could happen. But I'm glad it didn't.
It's strange when we get the resistance that shows up and you don't even know that it's there. That's the thing that's so weird about it. It's there. It shows up like, where did that come from? You know what I mean?
Oh, I know what you mean. Or, it's like I go to bed the night before, like last night I went to bed feeling incredibly non-resistant to doing this podcast on allowing today. And I had all kinds of great ideas and figured I'll just wake up and I'll just be on a roll with all that. And yet I know from past experience that by the time I sleep and wake up, sometimes I'm not in the same place. And so I woke up and I was in this place of like, well, what am I going to say? and and that's just resistance, but it came, from just fear, I guess, fear that I won't do it right. I noticed that in public speaking so many times when, there's all this angst people feel around getting up and giving their speech when I go to these Toastmasters meeting on Fridays, and then realize that it's just resistance. It's just thoughts that are telling them that this is going to be difficult, or I could blow this, or I could embarrass myself in front of these people, or I didn't prepare enough. And it's the opposite vibration that lets you give a good speech.
Right.
The same way as with a podcast.
Right.
Podcast is like giving a speech in a certain way, although we have each other to bounce off of. But you're really just trusting that you're going to say the right thing at the right time, and it's all just going to flow, and it's going to be easy, and you're going to be inspired. You're going to get these impulses that are going to come from your higher self, from your inner being, and you're going to speak from that place, and it's going to be creative, and it's going to be fun. It's going to be interesting, all that stuff.
Oh, yeah, and we count on that. I mean, yes, we do plan the podcast to a certain extent, but a lot of what we're doing is free form. It's what's coming to us at any given time. And you're right. Every once in a while, if our mood isn't right and we haven't really perhaps done all the work we normally do to, meditate or mirror work or whatever to get ourselves into that good feeling place, we'll sit down in front of the microphone. And it's a good thing the other person's there because you're drawing a blank, like, what's going on here? I can't think of anything.
Yeah. Yeah, but gosh, I'm drawing a blank right now. I can't think of it.
No, but it is what happens. Fortunately, we do have each other, so we can kind of keep it going that way. Yeah. But allowing is, first of all, it's one of the last concepts people learn where law of attraction is concerned. Which is weird. Why do you say that? Well, the first thing they learn is what the law of attraction is, right? You learn that law of attraction is when you think about a certain kind of thing or you have a certain kind of feeling, then you tend to attract more of the same. Or as Abraham says, that which is like unto itself is drawn. And that seems fairly straightforward. I mean, it seems fantastical. It almost seems magical, and certainly is the source of a lot of skepticism for people. But nevertheless, it's not a difficult concept to understand. That one comes fairly quickly. And then the second step after the ask is the receive, which includes believing. And it basically is where you leave it to the law of attraction, to the law itself to deliver whatever it is that you've put out there that you want. Yeah. And that's also easy to understand, often hard to believe, but nevertheless, it's easy to understand. Not a difficult thing. But allowing, that's the part that usually gets skipped. And well, you know what I mean? It does. It's not something that... Well,
it's the part that that it's focused on constantly in trying to explain law of attraction.
Yeah.
What is it then? Okay, you ask just by knowing what you don't want, and that already sends a rocket of desire into your vortex about what you do want. And so your vortex, within your vortex, this unseen realm, these things are instantly created. Well, of course, you got to believe that. That's where the belief, like you said, comes in. Like, really? So the second I say I want something, somehow it's created in this parallel universe. And now the third step is I just have to let it in. I have to allow it to come to me.
Yeah.
I have to allow myself to see it. I have to allow myself to feel my way to it. It's like, okay, well, I mean, I believe it's totally true. And, it's that getting into that vibration of what is the thing that I said I wanted and what is in my vortex. That's the interesting part. And it's so strange that it's all about being in this happy place, your daily dose of happy. Happy is what lets in all these things, joy and feeling good and having fun and not stressing and relaxing about things. That's how we recognize what's on our path. What is in our vortex, right?
And add in the confusion that gets created by having different ways of expressing the three-step process. Like in the movie The Secret, they present it as ask, believe, and receive. So the word allow doesn't even appear in the list of three concepts. It's actually, like you said, it's actually kind of a part of believe. But for most people, they see ask, believe, and receive. So they think, okay, well, I've made my ask. I want this to happen, and now I really, really believe it. So now I should receive it. Well, where is it?
Mm.
You know, it doesn't actually directly address allowing. I believed it, but I believed it. I really did.
Yeah, yeah, but belief and desire are actually the thing that allows us to to allow it, right? I mean, if we have a strong enough desire for it and we believe that it could happen, then that's. I like how Abraham was saying you only need to be hopeful, even just some belief and some hope that it's going to happen is better than not having that hope and that belief, because it will allow you to be sucked into the vortex, or allow the vortex, these doors to fling open, and the things that you want can begin to come if you just even have hope and some belief that it could happen.
Well, we're complex beings, and the complexity is where we trip up, I think, because on the one hand, we can convince ourselves that we believe something. And on the other hand, we can block ourselves from believing it at the same time. And on the third hand, three hands, on the third hand, we can indirectly block it because we're thinking about something else that's really not compatible with it. So we're blocking it in that way and we aren't realizing it. An example might be, let's see, what would be an example of that? Well, the classic example, you're looking for a relationship, and you're looking for that special someone, but you don't actually make room on the other side of the bed for somebody. It's just always piled with stuff, so that even if somebody did come, there would be no place for them to sleep. So on the one hand, you believe they were coming, and on the other hand, your actions didn't match your beliefs.
Yeah, yeah.
So you're not allowing, even though you're believing.
Yeah, it's interesting to be open, to be truly in a receptive mode. And I like how Abraham says 100% of your job as a human being is to be receptive, is to be open and receptive to well-being, to not only just to be open, but you're open to things unfolding in a beautiful way, unfolding well, and you feeling good. And ironically, it's in feeling good that the doors come open, and then we can be receptive to impulses that our higher being wants to give us. We're feeling easy, we're feeling relaxed. That's when creative ideas can come to us. And it's, even if we're like, I just joined this class on creating group coaching opportunities for people, where you create a list, and you send out to the list, and you get, say you send to a list of 1,000, and out of that you get 10 people that want to join your group coaching class, and your group coaching class is going to go for 10 weeks, and it's going to consist of 10 modules. And so the whole process of creating all that is what this class teaches. And interestingly, they teach in sort of the old school way, which is, you create to-do lists, and you set goals, and you set target dates, and you do all these different things that are, basically you're manipulating the situation. You're manipulating circumstances. And if you manipulate the circumstances and do everything you said you were going to do at the right time, and you do it in the right way, you'll end up with a group coaching program. And you'll end up with people in it because you followed every step that you were supposed to do, and you did it all in a timely way. And what Abraham seems to be saying is, do that, but do it from a place of inspiration. Do it from a place of following your own creative impulses instead of following some kind of a script. The same as if I go to give a speech and I have written it out, and I follow that thing I've written to the letter, that speech often, when people do that, it sounds canned. It sounds like, oh, they're following a thing that they wrote, and now they're sort of just mouthing it, and they're trying to make it sound like this is creative, spontaneous speaking. But in reality, you can tell they thought out every single phrase and every single word of this whole thing. And to me, that turns me off. I don't even like listening to speeches like that. It's even worse if they read it, of course, which people do. But where do we get in touch with the creativity? If I'm going to make a group coaching offering and I offer it to my audience, I want it to be creative. I want it to be spontaneous. I want it to be beautiful and fun and interesting and engaging and constantly changing and morphing, just like these conversations we have on the podcast. But to get to that place, it takes allowing creative things to flow to us from this higher energy. That's the energy that creates the universe, the energy that allows life to be this spontaneous, beautiful unfolding that it is. It's getting in touch with that, right?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. In fact, well, I like the way you describe what Abraham says. Probably another way to say it would be Abraham says, get into alignment before you put anything out there. And getting into alignment means feel good. Do whatever it takes to feel good. Get happy. Get your daily dose of happy at LOA today. But whatever way you do it, meditation, listening to the podcast, whatever way you do it, get into that happy, good feeling place first. Which is yet another example of how when we don't do that, the times that we don't do that is the example of how we contradict ourselves. On the one hand, we're working really hard on the allowing and the receiving and so forth. And on the other hand, we didn't bother to get ourselves into a happy place. So, yes, I'm ready to receive it. No, I'm not ready to receive it. Same time. Mm-hmm. And we don't realize it. It's another example of something we don't realize it. You have to almost have it pointed out to you, which is why Abraham points it out to us. You have
Which
to
is why we have this podcast.
Which is why we have the podcast. That's right. To remind ourselves. I mean, how often do I forget it during the day? How often do you forget it? Or the other co-hosts? Well, we know this stuff, right? We talk about it. And then in the middle of the day, it's like it blips right out of the head. And I don't know why that is, but it does.
Well, I think, the whole thing comes down to the thing that's been repeated on this podcast so many times, and which I think is the funny little quirk in everything, is that this is my personal belief, is just because we've been trained so strongly in the opposite. It's that we were trained by parents, teachers, etc., society, everything, movies, you name it, that reflected to us that the only way you get your results is by being super diligent, by being super hardworking, by being super focused, by being super attentive to detail, by being super organized, having your list of things to do, having your target date set, stay on track with all the details and use your mind as a military disciplinarian, right?
Right.
As an organizer that says, I have got to organize and I've got to be on top of all these details. And what law of attraction comes around and says is the complete opposite in a certain way. It's saying your details can happen, but they can happen magically. They can happen wonderfully. They can happen with a thrill of watching something unfold in front of your eyes that wasn't what you really imagined. It's better. It's more interesting. You're having more fun doing it. Well, how do you get to that place if you're just living entirely by a regimented expectation that you're going to do everything by the book? You're going to do it because you said you're going to do it. You said you were getting up at 5:00, and you said by 5:30 in the morning you're going to be writing. And so at 5:30 you're writing, and by 10:00 you're going to be doing this next thing on your to-do list. And I'm not saying don't get up at 5:30 and set the intention of writing starting exactly at 5:30 if you want to, but where's the inspiration going to come from? You've got to be in a good feeling place. So really it's just saying, get into alignment, get into this good feeling place, and then go do the thing that you want to do.
There's a cliche that often gets used to apply this kind of thought process that you're describing, where you do all the things, you do the micromanaging, you make sure every single step is done. The cliche is getting your ducks in a row, right?
Yeah.
You get all your ducks in a row before you go anywhere. And I used to believe in getting my ducks in a row. To a certain extent, I still do, because it's so habitually built into me. But I also now recognize that it isn't always the best thing to do. And the best evidence I know of that getting your ducks in a row is really not the right thing to do comes from ducks. I'm not
Okay.
kidding. It actually
No, go
comes from
ahead. Tell
ducks.
us.
It's
Tell
because
us.
if you've ever looked at like a group of adult ducks,
Yeah.
they may briefly swim in a row or walk in a row, but they don't stay that way. You know, they'll start passing each other. They'll go in different directions.
Right. Right.
So getting the ducks in a row didn't really help there. The only time you'll actually see the ducks in a row is when there are ducklings following their mother.
Yeah. And
And
even they don't stay in a row.
well, here's the really interesting thing. You're right. They don't necessarily stay in a row. Although if the mother is traveling, they will tend to stay in the row because they want to keep up with her. But
Well, yeah.
but the really important point is before they start to travel, the mother duck never gets them in a row. All she does is start swimming or walking in the direction she wants to go to, and they line up behind her.
Yeah.
So she never actually got her ducklings in a row. They did it themselves.
That's right. That's right. That's right. And the geese, I've been watching geese all winter long because they migrate to this area and they hang out in there. So they're always flying over in all these beautiful formations. And I've watched them so many times how they get in a row, how they get in that perfect formation where
The
they're in the
flying formation,
draft of each
yeah.
other's wings.
Right.
And I watch how it's just amazing how they do all these different things, and then they just slowly come into these patterns.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes pretty quickly, but they're perfectly in that V-shaped formation, and
Right.
they're perfectly dovetailing off each other's wings. And there's a lot of times when they're not, when they're just in haphazard patterns, and then they make that effort to get a line like that. And I don't know why I said that, but but I'm sure it has something to do with following the path of least resistance. That all of nature follows this path of least resistance,
sure.
But that path has a beautiful order to it. Maybe that's the point that I'm trying to make here, is that there is a beautiful order to randomness. There is a beautiful order to following your instincts. Like animals naturally just follow their instincts, and yet they accomplish beautiful things by just following those instincts. They get organized, that those geese get organized, and they accomplish flight much more efficiently because they get organized and they follow a leader that takes them to the next pond or the next place, the next field that they're going to land in and feed. But it's all happening by a divine order. And I think, like, for example, in forming this group I'm going to form for group coaching, it's going to unfold in a divine way. And I've even formed a mastermind group within these 125 people who are learning how to create group coaching, online. I've formed a mastermind group that is going to be people who want to do it using law of attraction. And so far I've got about 7 or 8 people that want to work with me because they know law of attraction is something that truly works, and they don't want to do this in a struggle manner. They want to do it in a flowing manner. They want to see their creation unfold in front of their eyes. Because what's one of the biggest things that makes life difficult for us is when we're trying to do everything by imagining that it's all up to us and it's all on our shoulders. And so then we're always looking for all the little tricks to be more efficient, to use our time management better, and to, how can I do this? How can I do that? But really, these things, so much can unfold for us when we're following our instincts. So that means we're following what Source's lead is, rather than, in other words, we're trusting the unseen realm.
Yeah.
We're trusting that the unseen realm is going to unfold this for us. And that sometimes takes a lot of trust.
It does.
Right? It isn't the way that we necessarily were raised.
Well, and it certainly goes flying in the face of things like the seminar you were talking about, where they teach you every single step that you have to do in order to make sure that your practice is a success. And like you pointed out, you follow up a method like that, all the pressure's on your shoulders. Guess what that's going to do to your state of mind? Guess what that's going to do to your positivity? It's going to knock it down at least a notch.
And your creativity.
Well, that's the second step. Once you've knocked down the positivity, you've just basically put a barrier in the way of the creativity. So you've essentially just cut yourself off from the one thing that you need more than anything else to make it work. That's the problem with micromanaging. I mean, that's really what you were describing. You were describing somebody who was micromanaging the building of their coaching practice. Mm-hmm. And when you micromanage, a couple of things happen. a few things happen. First of all, the person who is doing the micromanaging undermines themselves just by micromanaging, and they don't realize it. They don't realize they're doing it, but the fact is, you never see a happy micromanager. Have you ever noticed that? You ever worked with somebody who was a micromanager, or perhaps worked for somebody who was a micromanager, and they're never happy? They are never ever happy. They don't smile. They're like, oh, they're not like, oh wow, this is a great day. We're gonna have a good. No, you must do this. We gotta get this done. Gotta get that done. Gotta get that done. Oh my God, we're gonna be late. Gotta get this done right here. It's that kind of frenetic feeling to it, right? Or perhaps if they're more relaxed about it, well, we gotta get this done. We gotta get that done. Gotta do that. Why haven't you done that? You got to get that done right now. Do that right now. Do this, this. Never happy. Yeah. Never happy.
Well, I agree. I mean, I think it's why so many things from the military to corporate environments to school environments are lacking creativity and lacking interest and lacking in creating truly revolutionarily beautiful creations in the world that enthrall and delight masses of people, is because they're all built on micromanaged models where people think their way into the whole situation rather than feel, what's my heart want to create here? What is my spontaneity and my enthusiasm for life want to bring forward? And there's been this huge long history that we do things by the book. We don't do things because they feel good. We don't do things because they're fun. We don't do things to spur our creativity. We do things to get it done so that we can have the money, so that then you can have a house to go live in and a nice car, and then enjoy those things because that's what you ultimately want. You want the nice house and the nice car. Now you can relax and be creative in your garden or be creative in your workshop or be creative. But then people, if they're so trained by being in these regimented environments where it's dull and it's boring, so many, to me, that's what I couldn't even pick a major in college because they all look dull and boring. And I know within those things, there's beauty and there's creativity everywhere, really. But it's how much of it, like I really feel the world needs, billions more people who want to really be creative, and they want to be in touch with what's this realm of the divine, of the infinite, of, where beauty comes from. What's it informing me? What's it telling me? Could I somehow be an agent of that beauty, of that creativity? And that only happens when we get into this place of allowing.
Oh, that's true. Well, plus we also have the evidence of the relatively new discipline of positive psychology, because the positive psychologists have very consistently proven, study after study after study, that yes, you can actually build a successful business, for instance, doing the micromanaging approach. What you can't do is make a happy life doing that. Well, not can't. What the odds are extremely against it. And the way that shows up in the studies is when someone pursues doing the hard work and pursues the success in the hope that will help them find happiness, those people achieve happiness about 10% of the time. But for the people who reverse it, who say, I want to be happy first, and I'm going to let my happiness create my success, those people are successful 90% of the time. So it's exactly the opposite of what we're taught to believe, which is if you do the micromanaging approach, you will be successful and it will make you happy. That's the approach that we believe in. You described it. I mean, you put in your 30 or 40 years, and then you get to go have fun in your garden. Problem is, when they get to the garden, they're not having fun.
Yeah.
90% of the time, they weren't having happiness. And so by the time they got to the point where they were allowed to do some happiness, they didn't know how to do it. They just wasted the last 30, 40 years where they could have been practicing being happy. Because they were pursuing
and being creative, and what it is truly to what it is truly to have fun, what it is truly to enjoy your life. And luckily a lot of people do live a pretty regimented life, and they live by the the book of their corporate expectations or whatever but they they find a way to be creative within that realm,
Mm-hmm.
and that's a good thing. They find the enjoyment of their family. They find the enjoyment of their coworkers. They do creative projects at work, and they get in touch with their creativity. And I just feel like it's something that can be expanded on endlessly, obviously infinitely. Like how creative can we get, and how
Oh
much
yeah.
fun can we really have, and how much can we truly support each other in a loving, beautiful way. There's no end to that.
And
um,
plus, when somebody comes at a corporate job the way you just described, they do tend to be more successful. And even more importantly, if they
okay.
lose a job, which happens a lot in the corporate sector, if they lose a job, the happy ones are the ones who are most likely to be socially connected in a big way. They're the ones who rebound fastest.
Mm-hmm.
The ones who have not had that happy side, that social side, that side, that fills in the rest of it, not just the go to work, go to work, go to work. The ones who have that other side, they're the ones who rebound. They're the ones who get the new job quickest. They're the ones
Right.
who are able to recover from a setback like that.
Yeah.
The ones who haven't got that are the ones who struggle. They're the ones who remain unemployed for months, even years at a time. Again, this is not based on speculation. This is what the studies show.
Right. And what you're just describing, if you just take another step back, is obviously the law of attraction. Like
Exactly.
anybody, you get what you vibrate with. And so if you're vibrating with real enthusiasm and real creativity and passion and love for your life, then you're going to attract the things into your life that you want, whether it's a partner, or whether it's more money, or whether it's a better job, or the new house, or the new car, or just whatever you want is going to come from that vibration that you're cultivating. And so
One of
that's
my
all it really comes down to, in a certain sense, is what kind of vibrational atmosphere do you create by your feeling. What's the feeling that you're generating day by day, hour by hour, minute by minute? It's determining what's coming next.
That's right. Yeah. One of my favorite studies done by the positive psychology people is one I've talked about before on the podcast. I don't think I've talked about it for a few months, so good time to bring it back in. It's called the Nun Study. Have you ever heard of that one? The Nun Study?
Well, go ahead and tell me. I might have.
Oh, okay. Well, the
I know
Nun
of a couple nun studies.
well, this is actually a study made on a collection of essays written by novitiates, people who were planning to become nuns, back around 1930.
Okay.
And these researchers in the 80s found out that all of these biographies had been collected. They weren't actually so much, well, they were sort of biographies. The novitiates were asked to write about themselves, what was important to them, what their goals and dreams were, all that kind of thing. And they were collected and stored for decades. And many of them were recoverable, years later. They had been preserved, and people could find them and all that kind of thing. So these researchers found out about the study and contacted the Catholic Church and said, could we have access to these? We'd love to study them and see what they tell us about what happens to people where, they're influenced by their own emotional behavior patterns. And so the church said, yeah, sure, we can do that. So they made arrangements, and the researchers got a hold of this material. And one of the things they did is they first kind of grouped everything. They said, okay, here's this kind of person, here's that kind of person, here's that kind of person, so on and so forth. And then they brought in teams of reviewers to review the material, but they were reviewing it blind. They had no idea what they were reviewing for. They were just asked, what do you think about this person? Do you think that this person is a happy person, or do you think it's a sad person, or how would you evaluate this person based on what you see in their bio? And then they took those evaluations and they grouped them into, I think, 5 buckets. So the highest level bucket, so to speak, was the one where the top 20% happiest novitiates, based on what they wrote in their essays. And then the last group was the 20% most depressed novitiates, and then the others were kind of in between, based on these admittedly subjective ratings. And then they took that information, those 5 buckets of information, and they compared them to what had actually happened to these women over the years, because they knew what happened to them, right? They knew what their histories were. They could go look them up. They found a number of really fascinating things. In a nutshell, The novitiates who had the happiest, most positive outlooks lived substantially longer. Usually, I think it was like 15 to 20 years longer.
Mm-hmm.
They had happier lives. They had more successful lives. They got sick less. I mean, there were all these very positive results that came out of having an initial predisposition for feeling good about their lives. Mm. Whereas the ones who were at the far end and the other, the really bad bucket where they were very depressed and very unhappy, oh my goodness, the way that produced really negative results in their future lives was astonishing. Mm. Just astonishing. Mm. So, I mean, here you have basically these women who they had no idea what was going on. They had no idea that they were even setting themselves up one way or another. But their early conceptions about themselves, about their lives, played major roles in how their lives actually played out.
Mm. Yeah.
That's pretty powerful stuff when you think about it.
Well, yeah, it's going on with all of us, whether we can see clearly or not, to the degree that we're right. I mean, to the degree that we're truly relaxing around that whole issue of angst, mm-hmm. That's why I love that saying, from angst to ease. And that's the whole journey that we're really on in a sense is from, is to move beyond this angst eventually. Maybe we need to go in and feel, our feelings and those things. And that's wonderful. But eventually, don't we have to come to the place where we're living in a place of possibility, in a place of positive expectation, where we're really looking forward to having a life that is going to work for us or that is working for us. And we're willing to finally say, I'm done being miserable. I'm done being sad. I'm done being confused. I'm done being stuck. I'm done struggling, and I'm ready to allow this life to be the life that I want to live. And that's allow. Allow. How do you allow yourself to finally let go of struggle? And it's a choice. And sometimes we get convinced by listening to enough podcasts and listen to enough Abraham, or you do enough psychotherapy or whatever it is, but you finally get convinced that, I'm ready to have the life that I want to have. Like that story you tell often, right? Of the person who was asked, by Joel or somebody, like, are you finally ready to let go of the thing you've been struggling with for the last 25 years, mm-hmm. When are you going to put it down and decide that you can be happy?
Yeah, I believe what you were talking about is a client that Joel had who had been seeing another therapist for some 16 years because that other mm-hmm. therapist was convinced that she'd been sexually abused. And Joel agreed that was a pretty serious thing. And then his next question was, are you done?
Yeah, are you done processing it?
You've been doing it for 16 years. Are you done?
Yeah, right. Because sometimes we're just perpetuating the thing, believing that it needs to be, again, to me, it comes back to the belief in struggle. We've had a huge societal embracing of the belief in struggle. And because there have been times where we've been so threatened by the opposing enemy or famine or something, that we feel like we've got to be diligent and on our toes every single second, watching our P's and Q's, watching every single thing that's happening so that we don't get devastated, so that we don't starve to death, so we don't get murdered or whatever it was that our ancestors in the past got so traumatized about. And now we're carrying this trauma, and in a way we don't need it any longer. There's a lot of things that are saying, look, life actually is pretty incredible. I was watching all the birds at the pond yesterday, and just, how, if you could say those birds are struggling, if you want to look at it that way, they're struggling to raise their young. They're struggling to find a mate. They're fighting for competition of the branch in the tree. And you could also look at it entirely the other way. Those birds are having a blast. They're really happy. They're playing with each other. They're enjoying the flight. They're enjoying the water. They're enjoying the day. They're enjoying the song that they're singing. You could look at it that way too. Mm-hmm. And so it's all just a matter of are we willing and able to put ourselves in a framework that, hey, I'm choosing to have a life that works from ease. I'm choosing to have a life that flows from my infinite capacity for love and for joy and for interest and for enthusiasm and for fun, rather than, life is just constant, thing. We've got to be diligent and watch out, watch your
Mm-hmm.
back, watch your back. You
Yeah.
can get taken advantage of, you can get broke, you can lose your partner, you can blow it.
Now, there's also another factor that occurred to me that I probably should clarify, because one of the objections that was raised to the nun study was that it was basically saying your life is predetermined by what your attitudes were when you're 20.
Uh-huh.
And if you happen to have a bad attitude or you were in a bad place and you're just feeling negative, it means you're screwed for your life.
Yeah.
And the authors of the study were quick to point out, no, that's not what it shows. It shows that you are influenced by what your previous mindset was, regardless of the time frame. But you can, even if you've had a negative mindset, you can switch that around and switch the pattern.
Right.
See, the nuns who ended up having a lifetime that was very similar to what their early mental state was about simply just never changed their mental state. They maintained the same state throughout their lives. But if you change your state, you can actually see improvement. And in fact, they even cited some studies to that effect. I mean, another study that I've talked about is the one where a group of men in their 60s and 70s were brought together for a week by a researcher. And she gave them a bunch of tests, physical tests, medical tests, all kinds of stuff, just to have like a base reading to work off of. And then divide them into two groups, a control group and the test group. And the test group, she put them into a place in a building together where everything in the building had pictures and magazines and furniture and everything from 20 years before.
And television programs even.
Yeah, well, the whole thing. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And they were given name badges with pictures of themselves from when they were 20 years younger.
Mm-hmm.
And this was in the late 1970s. They were asked to behave like it was the 1950s. And they had President Eisenhower. His picture was on the wall instead of Jimmy Carter, that kind of stuff. And after a week of this, most of the participants demonstrated significant improvements in their physical readings. They looked younger. They had better eyesight. I still can't believe that one. How do you get better eyesight? But they did. They got better eyesight.
They got better hearing.
They got better hearing.
They tested all their functions. Some of them who had come in with canes and were hobbling ended up setting their canes down and playing flag football.
Yeah. It's just mind-boggling.
Yeah, and the difference in the two control groups was that the one group, they asked them to act as if they were that age again, and use all the props. The fact that they were showing the Cuban Missile Crisis on TV, they were showing, Eisenhower or whoever, Kennedy speaking on TV. They brought back all of the right, like you said. So they brought back so many of the actual scenes from the 50s, the actual magazines and everything, or the 60s, whatever it was. And they asked that one group to act as if they were back there and they were that age for the entire week, to just be in the place where everything you can imagine that you were at that age, speak from that, act from that, enjoy your life from that point of view. The other group, they simply put them into that environment with the television programs and the magazines and all the things from the time period, but they didn't tell them to act as if they were that age again. Mm-hmm. They just said, just be in that environment. And the changes were much more dramatic. They got changes in both groups in hearing and eyesight and all these things, but the group that actually acted as if they were back there had the huge amount of changes. They had the biggest changes.
Which is astonishing.
It is.
That flies in the face of everything that we thought we knew from medical science, where the human body is concerned.
Yeah.
So clearly the mindset, it doesn't matter what your mindset was in the sense of whether you're going to change it or not. If you're going to change it for the better, you're going to get a better result. Bottom line.
Yes. Yeah. And if you embrace the idea that you're going to do that, that you are choosing to do that consciously, it's more effective than if you just want happenstance and circumstance to change you. You know, a lot of people wait for life to show them, what's next. And that, I mean, there's a beauty to that. Of course, that is in a way what we're doing. We're watching it unfold. We're allowing these things to come to us. But when we're actively expecting the good thing to unfold for us, and we're keeping our consciousness as much as we can in that place of that anxious positive expectation, not anxious in terms of worry, but like we're excited about our life unfolding. We're excited about the day. Like when I go sit at the pond, I'm excited what I'm going to write, what's going to come out of me. And I ended up the other day, I was there for 4 hours and I wrote this whole piece that was very creative. I'm going to put it up as a blog pretty soon on my site.
Mm-hmm.
And I felt like it came because I was so inspired. I actually woke up that way that day, which was really wonderful, because I felt like I woke up knowing that I wanted to write this thing. I didn't know what I was going to say. And it took me 4 hours to write it.
Wow.
But it was, actually I dictated it. It came out in terms of sentences I dictated into my transcribing program on my Mac. But it came one sentence at a time, and it came really slowly. But each sentence was like exactly what needed to be said next. And I didn't know what I was going to say. Each sentence just came to me, until when I looked at the whole thing, it was all together. It was a beautiful piece to read for me. And I read it to several people, and they really thought it was wonderful. So, how do we be in that place consistently where we're receptive, we're to what the universe wants to give us? That thing that's in our vortex, as we said at the beginning of this podcast, if we've already put into our vortex the things that we really want in our life, in terms of partners and money and career and everything that we want to have accomplished in this day or in this lifetime, how do we let it in? And the way we let it in is by trusting entirely that it's going to come to us, trusting entirely that if we relax, we will receive these things.
Mm-hmm.
And yes, we still make effort, right? You still, like, you weren't going to get that book written without having certain expectations of yourself, that you had to do certain things at a certain time.
Yeah, I've never yet mastered the art of writing a book by saying, okay, book, write yourself.
And you walk in the next room and there they are.
There it is. It's all done.
Right.
I may get to that point someday where I can do that, but I'm not there yet. So for the moment, I settle for, I chose a book project. I know I'm good at it. I know that I can produce something that I would really like. I can find enjoyment in that. I can find creativity in that. And so that's what I did. And besides, I wasn't even having to write the whole thing. I mean, you guys were writing it. All 39 authors were writing it.
But I imagine you allowed a lot of it to flow to you. You allowed a lot of it to unfold, right?
Absolutely. Well, yeah, you have to. That's the only way you can get 39 people to write for you. You can't just say, you're going to write for me. You're going to do this on time, and you're going to do it in the way that I tell you to do it. That doesn't work too well.
Yeah.
But if instead you contact people and say, hey, I'm putting this book together, and I'd love you to contribute to it. It's going to be an opportunity for you to tell a story that actually comes from your own life, that demonstrates how the law of attraction works, how effective it is. And at the same time, since most of you are life coaches or Reiki instructors or whatever, you're all going to have the opportunity to be effectively advertising your business because you wrote a story for the book. So this is a win-win situation. Plus, we're going to be promoting the show with it. So it's going to be a win-win-win proposition.
And you're doing things every step of the way in creating a big project like that. You're undoubtedly doing things every step of the way that aren't coming by just, following a list of things to do. You're following a flow of those things unfolding, right?
In fact, it was Joel who reminded me that it was a different kind of project for me. He pointed out that in the past, I would have been the micromanager. I would have been the one who wanted to get the ducks in a row. I would have been the one who created the outline and said, okay, well, we got to do this, and this. And instead, with this project, I didn't do any of that. I just said, let's go. And I started contacting people. I had no clear plan other than here's what I've fleshed out in my mind. And I just wrote this thing up and sent it out to people. and said, "Would you like to be a part of it?" And they said, "Yeah." Now, if I had done it the way that the micromanagers suggest, I'd still be working on the outline.
Exactly. That's the thing. Yeah. If you think it through too much, if you rely on the process of logic, the process of analytical thinking, sometimes a lot of people who have brilliant ideas and they want to do something creative in the world and they're excited about it, but it gets short circuited by the micromanage side of it. And I think that's what I'm facing in this group coaching process. If I want to create this wonderful project and have it manifest, that's going to affect the lives of many people and my own life in beautiful ways, where people will get awesome coaching and they'll learn awesome things from my workshop. Well, for that thing to be really truly creative and fun and interesting and exciting for all of us, I have to be in that place, where I let it be created from that place. Otherwise, you're going to read about it and it's going to say, "Oh, yeah, that sounds okay," and sounds like what a lot of other people are doing. And then you go, how many workshops and things have you gone to where the description might even sound good, but you get there and it's pretty canned. It's like, okay, this guy's following just a script and he's, it's really boring, or it's, I've heard this all before, or it's being delivered in a way that is not very much fun and It's not very interesting, but I paid for it, so I'm gonna go ahead and sit through this whole thing.
Yeah, and it makes you wonder, where's their allowing? Because there's not a whole lot of allowing going on there. It's all scripted, it's all boring, it's all canned. Yeah, it's kind of, it's really like, why did I even bother to go to that? It reminds me of the story that Joel told back a year ago. He had to leave the podcast for a bit, and when he left, I brought David Barkey in, which was great, so we got another co-host out of it. But Joel wasn't able to come back for another 6-7 months after that because of two things. First of all, he had a new kid in his life who he later adopted this past December, and Justin is now part of Joel's family. But more than that, he had also been given the opportunity to run a clinic. He's a therapist, and to run a clinic using law of attraction principles.
Oh, wow.
And he loved that idea. It was really enticing to him and so forth. And he actually became a partner. They gave him a share of the pie, so to speak. And he goes in, and he's all ready to go, right? He's ready to go doing stuff. And his approach is not to pre-plan, not to micromanage. He just plows right in and starts getting stuff done. And, dishing stuff off, and okay, you do this. Okay, here we go. We're all doing our thing now. But the guy who brought him in was a micromanager. And he wanted to make sure that every single thing was planned out. So I love the way Joel tells us. He had, this guy, the micromanager, had a plan that involved creating meetings for the purpose of discussing when meetings were going to be held. I'm not kidding. He actually did that. They had meetings for the purpose of deciding when meetings were going to be held, who was going to be in the meetings, what was going to happen in those meetings. And the worst part, Tom, is that the ultimate goal of these meetings was to fix issues Joel had already fixed.
Wow. Yeah.
I mean, we're talking massive amounts of resistance going on here. Massive amounts. And, as you can imagine, Joel didn't stay in that job very long. He ended up leaving it pretty quick because he could tell this is not anywhere near what he had in mind. And he moved on. And the funniest part is when he left, he basically walked out. I mean, he didn't do it meanly or anything like that, but he basically walked out on what he knew was a bad situation with no clear prospect of what he was going to do for a living. He walked out on a Friday. By Monday, the word had gotten out through his network what had happened and that he had left, and he had so many referrals. His week was full. His first week in business as a private therapist.
Oh,
I mean, nice. Completely full schedule after a weekend, after walking out on a job. I mean, can you imagine?
Yes, that's wonderful. That the things that come to us when we're truly in that place are amazing. I think when we're really vibrating with a positive, hopeful, wonderful expectation. I assume that's what he was doing. When he knew he didn't want that, he put such a clear message of what he
Oh
did
yeah,
want.
yeah.
It sounds like he knew what he wanted all along.
Oh, he
So
did.
he always
Yeah,
was vibrating. He was already vibrating with that feeling. And then the universe just piled on, the universe just flooded his life with positive results
yeah.
because he was so much choosing that, right?
Exactly. Yeah. Interestingly enough, too, a lot of the referrals came from the people he had hired to work at this clinic, who knew they
Oh,
couldn't get those clients handled properly because of what the top guy was doing. So they were dishing the clients off to the guy who'd left the company.
oh,
I mean,
cool.
that's just
Well,
it's an amazing story. I wish we'd written that story. I never really kind of put the clamp on Joel and said, "Come on, write that story for the book," because that would have been a good story. But we'll include it in the
you could
second
put it
book.
in the second edition.
Yeah, exactly.
40 brand new stories from Walt Thiessen, LOA Today. 40 brand new stories of success with the law of attraction.
Well, actually, there's going to be an opportunity for readers because I've included a page at the end saying we're going to write future books. If you'd like to have your story included, send it to, and there's an email address, stories@loatoday.net. So we'll see. I have a sneaking suspicion we're going to get a lot of stories out of that.
Yeah, didn't you talk about at one point about having some kind of an ongoing weekly or monthly thing?
Yeah, like a mailing list, and I haven't put that in yet, but I'm really close to putting that in as well. The only thing I'm not sure about is, do I really want to manage that?
What would that be?
It'd basically be an email list. So like the Abraham Hicks list or Mike Dooley's Tut list or whatever, where they send out their daily.
Oh, where
thing,
you
their daily
send
message.
out a story
Well,
a
I'd be
week
sending
or
out a
something?
story, yeah. But there's a lot of work that goes in that. I'm not sure I really want to do that yet. So
Sure.
that's why I haven't absolutely committed to putting it into the book. But I may put it in there anyway and just see how many people sign up.
Yeah, there's leverage. There's leverage in alignment that it can open up so much. That's really something I kind of live for, is the wanting to see that, when that alignment just really is rich. It shows up in relationships, it shows up in terms of money, it shows up in terms of the work we do, the fun we have. How open can we get to allow things to begin to really rock and roll? You start to really live your life out loud, as I call it, because you're just noticing all the time the leading edge. It's like being a surfer when you're on that wave. There's just a place you get on that wave that is so beautiful that it just carries you. And from that place, you can glide, you can turn all over the place, you can cut back, you can do so many cool things. You can be inside the pipeline because the wave is just going to carry you if you're in that exact right place. And that's kind of, I think, what life is capable of being like when we're in the right place. Friends come, money comes, opportunities come, the right person rendezvous with you at the right time, because you're just in this great place.
It is amazing what happens, and the
And
other
that's
thing
allowing.
it
That's
is allowing. Well, the other thing that happens in an allowing place too is we become aware of the resistances we didn't know we had.
Mm-hmm.
They pop up, they show up
Sure.
at the time you least expect it, and you have to kind of be ready for that. But if you are, there are opportunities to let it go.
Yeah, exactly. We slowly get through all those resistances, I think, slowly or quickly. But I find like I'm always noticing more that I can let go of. Where is that resistance? How can I let go of it?
Exactly. Yeah. Well, this has been great. Just want to remind people that if you haven't subscribed and shared, you can go to the webpage to do that, loatoday.net. I won't even tell you how to do it. It's all right there. And I'll just say, Tom, it's been a pleasure. And before we say goodbye, tell people how they can reach out to you.
You can go to my website, which is youarejoy.com, youarejoy.com. And if you would like a free session with me, I'm happy to give you an hour where you can see whether or not you'd like to do coaching with me, but basically just bring some situation you want to talk about that's of concern to you.
And in the meantime, we hope that you'll join us next time here on LOA Today. Goodbye, everybody.